Hi everyone, thank you for joining my channel, True Crime Astrology. I have been waiting to get the birth date for Ashlee Buzzard. She is the mother who's been charged now in the case of her missing daughter. Well, actually, her daughter who was found dead, Melodee Buzzard. So I've been really wanting to get my hands on her birth date, take a look at her natal chart. And her birth date is public information at this point, and I did verify it by looking at her profile, which is on the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office website. So a couple things to keep in mind. I don't have an accurate birth time for her. So moon here is at 25 Aquarius, but that may or may not be accurate. So if she were born later in the day, her moon would flip into Pisces. So that's just something to keep in mind. Based on what I've seen of her in the media and the research I've done on her, she does strike me as more of a moon in Aquarius person, but let me know what you guys think if you've been studying this case. Does she feel like more moon in Aquarius to you, moon in Pisces? Let me know your thoughts. And as always, these are my interpretations based on my analysis of the aspects in her chart. All of this is opinion, none of this is fact, so take what you like and leave the rest. The first thing I'm going to point out with this natal chart is that Mars is conjunct her Venus. So I've seen this in a couple of other natal charts I've looked at for people in true crime in the media, one of whom was Susan Loring's. This is it can be a bit of an impatient aspect or a very impatient aspect. It can be quite impulsive. Basically, what this means is that when someone wants something, they'll do whatever it takes to get it. They see it, they want it, they'll snatch it up. On the other hand, if they don't want something to happen, they can do whatever it takes to make that thing not happen. Now, these two planets are in the sign of Virgo, which makes me suspect that Ashlee is someone who really thinks through what she wants and how to go about getting it. And she has the ability to be quite calculated and to plan through how she can make something happen towards getting what she wants. Now, sticking with this Mars, I want to point out that it's making a square to Uranus. This can be a pretty problematic aspect. So, this could mean that she has a tendency to be hair triggered, and this could lead to erratic energy. It might lead to anger outbursts or the potential for her to become violent. And then Uranus is making a direct opposition to her Chiron at the exact degree. So this could mean a few things. It could mean that someone reacts to hurts in sudden or unexpected ways, or it could mean that that they become wounded by unexpected things. It could also mean that she runs the opposite way from potential hurts. So, for instance, I broke up with him because I thought he might break up with me. So, in my mind, this just compounds the square between Mars and Uranus. I'm wondering if initially she has a tendency to get aggressive, potentially violent, and then she just runs for the hills when she perceives that she's going to be affected by whatever she's done. So it's not surprising to me that she has chosen to plead not guilty to the charges against her because this energy really says to me that this is someone who will run from perceived pain at all costs, even when it no longer really makes sense. Now, she does have this T square, which affects Pluto, making this opposition to her North Node. They're both making a square to Jupiter. Now, her North Node is in Taurus, which would suggest that she ultimately wants security, stability, which makes sense given a lot of the erratic energy that she has in her chart. But with Pluto making the opposition to her North Node, this means she's really going to be pulled back and forth between her past, her old, childhood, old beliefs, and the future quite a bit. So, what she knows really well is Scorpio, which is all about emotional security, trying to gauge who feels safe, who doesn't. Um, but she's supposed to move towards this path of trying to find physical stability and security in this lifetime. And she has a tendency to feel, oh, this is what I want to say. So, what I'm about to say is really important, given what's going on. So, with somebody with this kind of an opposition, this is someone who may feel like things must end before they can move forward. Because again, Pluto is conjunct South Node here. This is someone that really, really wants to transform the old, old stuff, old beliefs, old ways of thinking. So this is someone who feels like things really need to end before they can move forward. And growth is also typically going to come by way of intense or extreme experiences because it's Pluto. So that is quite interesting. And then Pluto making the square to Jupiter means this could make for someone who has well, she could be quite obsessed with power and control, of course. Her personal beliefs and philosophy could really put her in conflict with others. Keep in mind, she has Jupiter in Aquarius, so that does make for someone who has these very different, non-conventional beliefs and philosophies. And again, if her moon is in Aquarius, that kind of adds on to the identity of someone who really kind of prides themselves in being sort of a rebel, somebody who thinks differently, feels they are different than normal society, so on and so forth. I also want to point out that her Sun and Mercury are making a trine to Jupiter, so I do see this as somebody who is quite self-expressive. She really doesn't shy away from speaking up or from really expressing her beliefs, her ideas, things like that. Now, again, this may not be correct, but the moon at 25 Aquarius, if this is correct or it's around this time that she was born, this would be making a square to Saturn. And I do want to bring this up because it's quite important. So, Moon Square Saturn could play into some mental health difficulties for her. This could mean that she feels quite isolated, alone. Given the Aquarius energy, she already feels different than everybody. So, this might intensify the feeling that, people can't relate to her. She's all on her own. She doesn't have anyone. This could really lead to feelings of depression, loneliness. And since childhood, she's probably felt quite judged by others and not supported emotionally. The judgments she perceives by others are not necessarily real, they could be imagined. But things, of course, are now exponentially worse for her given that she's been charged with this very serious crime. So the world is basically judging her at this point. Now, she has her Sun and her Mercury making a square to Neptune. And Neptune, I'm finding it's such a key player in the natal charts of perpetrators or people in true crime in the media. And that makes sense because Neptune is all about the stories that we tell ourselves. So, Mercury square Neptune in particular signifies that this is someone whose thinking is often distorted by illusion. And not only does she have difficulty understanding others, a lot of people are going to have difficulty understanding her when she communicates. This is someone, again, who typically could see the world through a different lens than other people. And she has an overactive imagination that can definitely lead to self-deception. So I was thinking about a video I saw of Tyler Brewer. He was the guy that was a mutual friend who came to her house to try and talk to her about Melodee, her missing daughter, about a month ago. And he claimed that she kept him imprisoned, wouldn't let him go. I think she was ultimately, the charges were ultimately dismissed. But one thing that he said to the news reporter that I found really interesting and bizarre was that she had a pillow in her home that was dressed up like Melodee. I think he said it had like her clothes over it, and it somehow was supposed to symbolize her. And Ashlee allegedly told him that, um, the pillow represented Melodee because she missed Melodee. So that makes me think of this aspect, Mercury making the square to Neptune, because that's like, it's just like a story that you can tell yourself and kind of you could easily dupe yourself into believing, oh yeah, my daughter's here with me. She's right next to me on the couch. She's not missing. She's not dead. Um, so I just wanted to point that out. And then what makes this worse is that Mercury is conjunct her sun. So she can't really tell the difference between herself and her Mercury. Now, another thing I want to point out when looking at this chart in totality is that I almost feel like I see three different clusters. Like there's three different voices going on for Ashlee at all times. I don't, by voices, I don't mean like psychotic voices. Um, I just mean different parts of her personality. So the first voice that I see for her involves the mutual reception between Venus in Virgo and Mercury in Libra. And for those of you who don't know what mutual reception is, this is when you have a planet that, so for instance, Venus in Virgo, it's ruled by this Mercury, which is in Libra, and then Libra is ruled by Venus. So there are two planets that basically ping back and forth between each other. And then each of these planets, like I said before, are conjunct the Sun, conjunct Mars. So this first voice that I kind of see for her plays out something like, I want what I want. It's fair that I have what I want. Again, fairness comes in with the Libra energy. I want it right now. Give it to me right now. That, of course, goes back to the Venus-Mars conjunction, like I talked about earlier. The second cluster that I see for her involves Uranus in Sag, and this is a mutual reception to Jupiter in Aquarius. So Mercury in Sag is ruled by Jupiter in this chart. It happens to be in the sign of Aquarius, which again is ruled by Uranus. And this could potentially bring in the moon if it is in Aquarius, because again, Uranus co-rules Aquarius. So what I imagine this second part to be, it could sound something to her like, I am different. I can't do what everybody else does. I'm special. I have to do it my own unique way. My needs are different than other people, and I can't follow your rules. And then the third cluster has to do with Saturn in Scorpio, Neptune in Capricorn, and then this Pluto in Scorpio. So we start with this Neptune in Capricorn. This is ruled by Saturn in Scorpio, and then that is ruled by Pluto, which is in its home sign of Scorpio. So again, if this was making a square to the moon, I might see her saying something to herself like, I'm a bad person. I shouldn't have done that. And the only way to turn my life around is to do something dramatic. Again, this kind of harkens back to what I talked about before with Pluto making this opposition to her North Node. Now, I wanted to try and get a sense of, I wanted to try and get a better understanding of her wounds. Um, like what might be driving her to run away from all this pain she has. So I'm looking at her Chiron and Gemini here. Now, Chiron in Gemini in general has to do with wounds around communication, maybe not really feeling understood by others. But in this chart, Gemini, again, it's ruled by Mercury in Libra. And like I said earlier, that's conjunct the sun. And then Mercury in Libra. So the Mercury is ruled by the Venus in Virgo. Again, that's conjunct Mars. Um, I should say Venus in Virgo. It's ruled by the Mercury in Libra. Anyway, sometimes I trip over my words when I've been talking for too long. So what I surmise about the pain, the wounds that she goes through, what she's running from is, you know, so Libra tends to be sort of thinking about other people. This is the opposite of Aries energy, which is all about me. And then Libra is all about you or about us. It's always looking at the other side. It's always looking and considering the other person or their point of view. So when I'm looking at the linkages here, I'm sort of wondering if she may be thinking, what I want is me. Again, the sun. I do everything for everybody else and no one does anything for me. And it's so unfair. Again, back to the Libra. I've really thought this through, Venus and Virgo, and something must be done about it, right? Because Mars is conjunct Venus. So I wonder if this is a thought loop that kind of plays through her head and could potentially get her into trouble. So that is my analysis of her natal chart. I'm probably going to be doing another video showing the transits and the progressions as well to October 9th, which was the last time that her daughter was seen. And then also November 6th, which was when she was charged with falsely imprisoning this guy, Tyler Brewer, who I brought up. I can even go over the transits, what was going um, on December 23rd when she was taken into custody. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. I'd really love to hear I'd really love to hear from you. If you're interested in true crime, you're interested in astrology, you're interested in really learning more about forensic astrology, astrology as it might relate to people in true crime and why they might commit some of the crimes that they do, definitely subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned for future videos, and thank you so much for watching.